Grab your coffee, mama. It's time for coffee, clients, and nap time. I'm Sarah Marie, and this is your guide to building a business that works for you and your family. Here, we'll dive into creating a thriving business that lets you be the hands-on parent you want while designing the life you've always dreamed of. So if you're ready to balance business success with family life and make it all work in a way that feels right for you, then let's dive in. Hey mamas, and welcome back to another episode of Naptime Chats, the interview series where I talk to mums in business who are creating real change while raising their families. Today's guest is someone whose work I've admired for a while, so I am so excited to introduce you to Lauren Perrett, the founder of BubbaDesk and Wombee. Lauren is a mum of two little ones and the brilliant mind behind two purpose-built solutions designed to make life easier for parents. BubbaDesk is a network of co-working spaces with onsite childcare, and they're bridging that gap between being present for your kids and still getting meaningful work done. And her second venture, which is launching soon, Wombee, is an app that connects mums and mums-to-be into local, values-aligned groups using tech to spark real offline friendships and support. In this chat, Lauren and I are talking about the reality of starting a business out of necessity as a mum, how she's redefining flexibility and proximity-based work, and what it really takes to build something meaningful while raising a family. It's an inspiring, grounded conversation about designing business around motherhood and not the other way around. Thank you so much for joining me, Lauren.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. Let's start with talking about your journey as a mum and how you decided to start these amazing businesses that you're actually running now.
Yes. Well, look, I won't tell you the story of how I conceived my child. That might be a different podcast. But obviously, I fell pregnant with my first baby in COVID. So I was full of perinatal anxiety throughout my pregnancy. I didn't even realize what it was. I thought I was ill. It was quite complex. Then I had my baby, and then the floodgates just well and truly opened from a postpartum anxiety point of view. And it wasn't until I kind of shared some of my feelings with my mother's group that I was like, oh, okay, that's what it is. One, it's normal. Two, it's a thing. It's not me. And so that then kind of was the beginning, I guess, of my journey as a mumpreneur, mum founder, mum business owner, whatever you want to call it, because I then had a very specific pain point when returning to work whereby I didn't want to leave my baby because it felt innately wrong to be a physical distance away from him. Now, that was probably a portion of a just maternal instinct, but it was certainly heightened by this postnatal anxiety. So I couldn't afford a nanny, too expensive, not deductible in any sort of way. Traditional daycare didn't feel right. So came up with the idea of BubbaDesk, which is combining co-working with then childcare, with producing a close proximity childcare option. And then that's obviously, 3 years ago now that was born. Since I've had another baby, Harvey. He's now 2. So in the midst of growing a business and scaling a business, I've also grown a baby and raised 2 children. And then along the way, I also had this idea that there's got to be a better way of putting together mums into groups. And so therefore, Wombee was born, which is the app for mothers groups. So yeah, that's my journey so far. 2 boys are thriving. My businesses are thriving. Questionable about whether I'm thriving, but certainly doing okay.
I love that. I think that is very relatable to all mums in business, that we put the kids and the businesses before ourselves a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear how, let's start with BubbaDesk. How has BubbaDesk grown from that initial idea that you had and become what it is today? I know you've got venues. Do we call them venues? We've got locations.
Yeah, locations, whatever you want.
The locations are now, you started with one, 3 years later, you've got locations everywhere. Can you how did that grow and where is it at today?
Yeah. Look, it started very small scale. Obviously, it started as an MVP, a minimal viable product. We piloted it on the Central Coast. I'm sat in the MVP today. It's actually one of my favorite locations because it's small, it's the right kind of size, it's intimate, it's got a really nice community feel. And so we started essentially with validating the idea. So putting a survey out to local mothers groups. Would something like this resonate with them? I wanted to get it to a certain point of interest before we hit to pull the trigger on getting a space. Obviously, with a service-based business, it's high capital upfront to make anything happen because of all the lease costs, the fit-out costs, soft furnishing, hiring staff, etc. So that's how we initially started. And then the scale kind of came from really where the demand was. So it quite quickly gained momentum from other parents' interest. And I quite quickly understood that other people felt very much the same as me. So we were really hitting a specific pain point, and we were actually providing a very, I think, obvious solution to this pain point that modern day parents were crying out for. So the next part of the scale, we actually took a pathway that we later regretted. So we actually took on a lease that was far too big, purely based on the interest that we had in that specific area. The interest actually didn't translate into booking. So that was a really interesting lesson that we thankfully learned early on, is to be cautious in the size and not to be too bullish just purely based on the registrations of interest. But that would be our theory. Every time that we launch a space, we have a couple of months out, we would run a campaign, make sure there's enough, in theory, interest for that area. And then we would ensure that there was an early bird booking kind of phase so that we were opening with a certain amount of occupancy. So we weren't being silly or too apprehensive with that kind of an early booking phase. And so we were able to scale smartly. And now more recently, we're scaling with partners. So it's not just us doing our owned space. It's us doing it integrated into existing buildings, existing operators. So we're actually kind of lowering that risk when it comes to our exposure.
I think that's really clever from a business point of view as well, being able to negate that risk, so to speak, in that sense. I'm really curious about, obviously you created BubbaDesk for a need that you had in your own life. You didn't want to go back to work and leave your baby behind, but in doing so, you threw yourself quite deeply into the active part of building a business from scratch, which can often be more intense than, going back to work to a 9 to 5. So how did you juggle that, and how did that feel for you?
Yeah. So at the beginning, I was still working for an employer full time, albeit I was quite good at the job, so I could pretty much get it done in 4 hours. And, the rest of the time was definitely focused on BubbaDesk. But the thing, and it's still true now today, even more so, is I'm very, very passionate about what we're building. And because it's the type of business that we're valued based on the experience that we give our members. And so I have direct feedback most days on the experience that members are having. And so that's a continual, very real IRL experience feedback that I'm getting from members, which then motivates me to continually build on what we're doing and to refine it and to make it even better and take it to as many families as possible. So that has always been, I guess, the fire to keep going. Business is 24/7, especially in the early days. Yes, at one point I felt like I was working way more than I'd ever worked before, and trying to balance that with having a young baby. And then the irony of BubbaDesk is supposed to produce work-life balance, and you're supposed to be spending more time with your baby so that because they're right next door. I did have to occasionally kind of remind myself what is important. And these days are so fleeting with young children that, yes, I want to push the business as much as I can, but I also need to be cognizant of the age that my children are at and what's really important in my life.
Mm.
That was a balancing act. It still is. And there's days I get it right. There's days I get it really, really wrong. And I've barely looked at my children all day. And I'm just like, what am I doing? Like, it's hard. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes the bigger picture can push aside what it is that we're actually trying to achieve by being, working mums or mums in business. I'd love to chat about some of the biggest care related barriers that you're seeing for mums that are either retiring to return to work or growing their business.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is quite a complex question, but in its simplicity, I believe that there's not enough options from a care perspective that are supported. Like, yes, of course, you have your own choice as to whether you choose a nanny, an au pair, your grandparents, traditional daycare, a service like BubbaDesk, but only one of those is actually funded by the government. So, in my opinion, care it's required for productivity. So it should be looked at as a tax deduction. I've always had that view, but it certainly should be looked at from a broader perspective when considering what other forms of care can be supported and provided, because there's so many different, it's as a proximity thing. Are we close enough to a traditional daycare to even access it? Am I ready for my baby to be far away from me? Do I trust the operator of that particular daycare? Am I confident in the transparency that I might get from this particular care option? So, it's a sensitive topic, especially now. I think the right conversations are happening from the subsidization, is that a word? Point of view. And yeah, hopefully it's a step in the right direction that we recognize women want to, and at this point probably need to contribute to household income. And so we are now a dual household workforce. So I think it's 7 in 10 now, both parents are out working. And to be quite frank, the care options haven't kept up with these modern working parents and the needs. 40% of people, hybrid workers, at some point they are working from home, probably more in that kind of demographic of parents that are 0 to 3 by nature of your lifestyle, and also the legislation that came in a couple of years ago that actually support flexible work arrangements for parents. And yeah, like I said, the care arrangements have not kept up, which is why I'm so passionate about what we're building with this close proximity care option, because it provides the opportunity for parents to return to work probably earlier than they originally anticipated because of the close proximity. I can go in, I can breastfeed, I can go and cuddle, I can stay close, I can have secure attachment, I can put them to sleep if they're not great at sleep. Like, it just gives parents the option of choice when it comes to care arrangement.
I think choice is such a really important option for us to have as mums, whether you're building a business or, going back to work. I know locally it's up to 2 years wait list to get a child in my local area into traditional daycare, which is just ridiculous. Like, my little one turns 2 next week. And that means, had I put him on a care wait list the day he was born, he may be have care options available coming up to him now. That's a whole 24 months worth of making it work in the background. But mums are then struggling with that on top of everything else that they are doing and achieving.
Yeah.
Blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind.
Need a Australian Prime Minister that's a mother of a child this age, and then we might finally get it.
I would be very interested to see what would happen if that ever happened.
Oh.
It would be a whole different ballgame, I feel. Many of my listeners are mums who have chosen self-employment to try and make it work for exactly that reason. What parallels do you see between mums having to make these choices to go into business themselves because the care options just really aren't there for them?
Yeah, well, I think, there's a moment when you have your baby where there's perspective that comes into play. I know it certainly was for me, where, you know, a career that is in an area that you're not necessarily passionate about, particularly, or it's not flexible for your work arrangements, does shift the dynamic in terms of what's important for you and what care structure works best for you. So, in my opinion, the traditional care structures and some of the less progressive working environments are just not conducive to enabling mums to do it all and to do it all successfully. Another reason why we're building BubbaDesk. And, there's a stat that says 1/3 of all small businesses in Australia are owned by women, and this number is growing. And so that would mean that that shift is true. People are wanting to pursue something else. They want to have flexibility, but the care system still is not supporting parents that go down that route. So there's traditional daycare lacks flexibility. It's very rigid. You have to stick to your days. You can't move around. It's 10 hours. And so then we're forced to either hire a private nanny or work when we can in between naps, which only kind of works until a certain point, and then babies don't sleep anymore. So they're not able to work unless you work at night. And if their children are anything like my 4-year-old, they also don't sleep at 4. So then you're not doing any work at night or during the day. So yeah, that's the stat around how the growth in women businesses also surprises me, because how do parents find the time to do it? I mean, I know we can, but I often surprise myself at how we manage to get it all done, because between even just parenting alone, it's exhausting some of the time, let alone then also starting and maintaining a business.
Yeah, it's like we're super mums, and I really don't like the term super mum. I think it's a bit cliche, but it's just that we manage to do all these things, and we manage to do it alone a lot of the time, which segues me quite nicely into your other business, which is Wombee. Do you want to tell me a little bit about what that is, and my listeners, and why that was created?
Yes. Look, I like things that aren't clunky. If I see a solution that is full of holes and just isn't efficient and effective, I want to fix it, right? That's my innate, I guess, entrepreneur spirit, another cliche saying in me. And so Wombee is an app specifically designed for mothers groups. So the pain points that I recognized from my own experience of mothers groups is during pregnancy, I was seeking connection. I actually wanted to make mum to be friends at that point where I was, you know, me as an individual. And so that I had people I knew relatively well for those first few weeks of postpartum. Now, in Australia, traditionally, you're not connected into a community or council health, whatever service based mothers group until sort of 6 to 8 weeks postpartum. Of which, if you do not make that first initial in person meetup, you're coming onto the back foot. Now, you might not make that because you're tired, your baby's sick, you might have had a traumatic birth, and so everything's just pushed out, or you might just not feel like it that day. So, if you do that, and then you've kind of missed out, right? And there's no other alternative way unless you post on Facebook randomly going, does anyone want to be my friend? Which is what I did, by the way, in my pregnancy. Luckily, lots of people said yes. So I then had to clunkily add them all as friends, probably miss people. Then they missed the message requests, send them all a link into a group. It took me probably 48 hours to create this group, by which time I was like, this has got to be a better way. And so that played on my mind over the last couple of years. I also identified that WhatsApp, Messenger, whatever kind of, I mean, those are probably two messaging services that you would use for a mother's group, are actually not built for mums, right? They're quite generic, back and forth messaging. And during that first couple of months of postpartum, of your maternity leave, me and my mother's group were catching up all the time. We were always like, oh, let's go and do this, let's do that. And so then we would try and remember what we would said about our meetup. And it was through like 100 messages. Or then we tried to connect all our calendars, but everyone had different calendars. Not everyone was Gmail. It just turned into this like mess. And so I built Wombee, which is a solution that basically solves all of those problems. So it's a find your mother's group app. It's also then, if you have an existing mother's group, migrate over to Wombee because it's built for mother's group. It has an inbuilt planner and meetup tool. It will also, as we kind of evolve and grow, it will also have expert advice and support within the app as well. What I was finding was within like the world of Facebook, it's very much unsolicited advice, or often non-science backed advice. I read all the time. Now I'm a second time mum and I know it all. Ha ha ha. You see these comments and you're like, that's not what we should be advising a first time mum. It's not, one, it's not true. Two, it's not safe. And so I wanted to create a space and environment that is specifically designed for mothers groups. Now, totally aware there's an app out there that involves swiping on mums to find friends. We're not one of those. We're not a one-to-one app. We're not like a swipe app. It is an app that hopefully puts you into a mother's group based on not only your due date, but actually your traits of yourself. Like, what are you into? Fitness, yoga, books, cooking. And it's connecting people based on more than just your baby's due date. So that's what
I think that's really needed. I can tell you from my own experience, my eldest is 14 and a half, and I was put into mother's group, when she was born. That mother's group was in a different city from where I live now 14 years ago. Didn't get put into a mother's group for my second, who just turned 12, because I just assume that you're connected in with the ones from the previous one. It's a second child. And then a decade later, I went back and had my third child. So you can bet your bottom dollar that I had no other mums that were having babies in my friendship group. All my friendship group were parents of preteens and teenagers. And there's just no connection point for someone in my situation who is going back to do it again for a third time, 10 years later, without all those connections. So I found that lack of community and support was quite a big influence in how my third pregnancy and post-birth journey went. So having an app such as yours is such a crucial missing link in that support system in our community, especially in my opinion. Yeah. Had I known about it 2.5 years ago, it would have been amazing.
Oh, it's not built yet. So we're going live. It'll be ready for sort of wider market use probably in October. We're just doing the final testing now, and we're going to invite a few select people to be the first users. And then, yes, we will go far and wide, including Tasmania, from October.
I love that. As I said, it is most definitely needed, especially for mums out there, because connection is such a huge missing link in our community. Like, we have these communities where we just don't have that connection point anymore. Are you seeing that, to swap back to BubbaDesk again, are you seeing that the mums that come in and use BubbaDesk, are they actually are creating their own sort of like connection points as well? So obviously they're getting out of the house. They're no longer having to work from home. They're not having to be in an office with people that maybe don't get the mother work balance. Are you finding they're actually making connections within the centres and the location?
Yeah, it's like we have small groups, right? So it's up to 16 per day. So by nature of that, and by nature of the fact that you are in a room with everyone all day, and the fact that you are going through the exact same stage of life, so you're probably experiencing similar pain points, experiencing similar milestones from your children's perspective. And so there's a lot of relatable content that can be a connection point. So yes, we do find that there's friendships that are formed. I've had some members leave technically, but they're still using it as just coming in and using the desks occasionally to kind of keep that community aspect, even though their children are too old. And I also know that some of our nannies still also look after some of the children outside of BubbaDesk occasionally as well, because equally as the parents are making connections, they're really bonding and forming very close, really trusted relationships with the team because of the byproduct of it being close proximity. The parents are in the children's room chatting about their child, the day, the routine, what they did on the weekend, and they're invited to stay for as long as they want. They can stay in there all day if they like. And so it very much naturally forms close bonds, close relationships, because our team very much care deeply, like it's their own children, for each of these babies in our care. So yeah, it's kind of like an aunt, an aunt relationship. And yeah, we experience all emotions in BubbaDesk. So we get a lot of first time mothers, a lot with anxiety, and I can really relate to that as well as our team. All of our team are mothers themselves. We really hire consciously. We try and make sure that all of our team members are mums, because then they get it. There's just something that happens when you give birth, and then you just get it. So we try and ensure that the environment is very supportive for all emotions, including crying, which I did this morning.
Yeah, love that. In an ideal world, I'm just curious to know, in an ideal world, what do you see coming up for BubbaDesk? Like, where would you like it to be? And the Wombee as well. Like, what in your ideal world are you creating for mums?
So BubbaDesk's mission has always been to be the first choice of care when returning to work, right? And that means that we then are always striving to build a solution that is supportive of that moment. Now, at the moment, we talk to a specific demographic simply because of the fact that we're not funded, right? So by nature of that, there's an accessibility issue whereby we're priced at a certain point that not all families can access. So I would like to see BubbaDesk or co-working with on-site childcare in general as a category viewed by the Australian government as a very much viable solution that supports all aspects of what we're trying to strive for. So children, how are we supporting the children best? They are the most important thing in this picture. How are we making sure the environment is most supportive for a baby at that age when we know how important the first 1,000 days are? How and how are we supporting the parent in that return to work phase when we know how the high percentage of parents that actually leave the workforce because they are not comfortable or they cannot access the childcare that they want? And then the impact that that has overall on the Australian economy and productivity. I believe, obviously, that this kind of concept, this category of childcare should be recognised and should be supported the same in equal way as traditional daycare and family daycare. It provides all of the reasons why I could talk about it for days and days, obviously. I'm very passionate about it, but that's the vision. And we're having some interesting conversations with government, with Department of Education to hopefully get to that point one day. And look, for Wombee, I want it to be the first choice app when it comes to forming mothers groups. So we hope that, healthcare professionals in the early phase of the maternal and child health stage of when you have first had your baby will recognize that and encourage mums to form a group within Wombee versus any other kind of messaging app because of all the additional support that it offers. We're in obviously very early stage. We've only just built it. We're about to release it, but it's amazing what you can achieve in a few years. Like with BubbaDesk, we launched in November 2022. We're not even 3 years old yet, and we've already got 8 locations with a pipeline of probably another 5. So these things just if you keep showing up and you keep your passion, then momentum helps along the way. And for me, I have met and connected and partnered with amazing Australian female-led baby and parenting brands that have been incredibly supportive. And that has been one of the key reasons why I think we've been so successful is aligning ourselves with already established credible brands like we have in Australia.
Yeah, I think that's, as I said to you before we started recording, I followed you right from the start when I was first pregnant. I thought it was like such an amazing thing. So to just see how far you've come over the last few years with the BubbaDesk brand is just so amazing to see what you have achieved. I'm curious what you now, knowing where you're at, would say to you who had the idea back when your little one was your first was very little and you had this idea to start this business. What piece of advice would you give yourself?
Don't do it. Enjoy your mat leave. Don't enjoy your cushy job where you only work 4 hours a day and your mainstream income. No, look, I mean, honestly, the advice is just one foot in front of the other every day, right? Like it might not feel like you're moving much every single day if you count the minutes, but when you add it all up, the impact can be quite profound if you just keep putting one step in front of the other every day. I do think that you need a purpose to do that. If you're not feeling very purposeful in your work or your business or your life in general, really, I think it makes it really hard to show up every day authentically and passionately to drive your team forward, keep growth happening. So I think you need a really strong passion to give the business justice in the first place. It is literally 24/7. So if you're not passionate about it, then it's going to suck all your energy and it's going to drain you. It's going to have probably an impact on relationships around you, your children. So, I think having a moment every day and just being like, okay, am I still passionate about this? Does this still make sense for me and my family? Because otherwise you probably will regret the energy that you pour into something that's not necessarily going to go anywhere for you or financially or from a business perspective. So yeah, I'm always thinking about that. But at the moment for us and for me, there's always something that I know that we can be doing better. Like we strive at the moment for what can we be doing that's above and beyond what traditional daycare does from a hiring perspective, for example? Like what can we be doing? We're always kind of setting our benchmark to be 10 times higher than what we're seeing in practice in the market. So that's a really interesting kind of open-ended goal for me at the moment. So yeah, it's one worthwhile pursuing, and it's purpose-led as well as business-led. So I don't know if I've answered your question. I'm pretty much just listing out my goals here for the year, but
I think you've definitely answered the question. What would be the one message then that you would want my listeners to take away from this episode we've just recorded?
Trust your instinct. That's basically BubbaDesk's motto, right? Like you'll see it a lot of our comms. It's what I use as my radar, I guess, in all aspects. It's what started the business. I think a mother's intuition in life, business, parenting, care arrangements is usually right. So if it doesn't feel good, doesn't feel right, you just get a sense of that's not what we should be doing, then trust it and don't do it. Or do it if it feels really good. Because we've had moments, right, where, it's from the outside in, obviously with most businesses, you want to paint the picture that it's all success and it's all going swimmingly. But of course, that's not, no business is like that. No career is like that. No life is like that. But there's been moments where we've been like, all right, maybe this is the end. Maybe we're not going to go anywhere. And I just had this feeling inside me where I was like, we have to keep going. This is important work. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that kind of is what kept us going, is that instinct, because it wasn't necessarily the numbers. It wasn't necessarily anything else other than just my gut being like, no, we have to keep going on this.
What a beautiful note to end our episode on. Thank you so much, Lauren. Now, if my listeners would like to connect with you or learn more about BubbaDesk or Wombee when it becomes available, are you able to let them know where they can find you?
Yeah, so BubbaDesk, you can just type BubbaDesk anywhere and it will come up. With Wombee, very important to spell it correctly. So it's womb, as in WOMB, and then EE. So on Instagram, we're wombee.app. Website is wombee.com. And then with me, I'm on LinkedIn. So you can search me for, I think my full name is on it. So it's Lauren Topaz Ruth Perrett. But I'm quite active on LinkedIn. So for any LinkedIners, I think it's a very untapped platform. I had one post the other day that got about 80,000 views and probably led to me having about 5 inbound, really exciting kind of directions. So if anyone's listening that's not using LinkedIn, just start posting, because I think that the stat is something like only 1% of LinkedIn users actually use it for posting. Everyone else is just viewers. So be the 1%.
Yeah, be the one posting.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining me on Coffee, Clients and Naptime. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another mum who's ready to build their dream life. You can also join our Facebook page or Instagram to stay connected every day of the week. The link is in the show notes. Just remember, you've got this, and I'm here to help every step of the way.